Hello, we have people. I think we have people. Let's get rid of our start screen here. There we go. Hi, welcome. Welcome to the workshop. Tonight we're going to talk about Flintlock weapons, and I'm going to break apart one that needs some serious TLC, see how far we get with that project. You never know what you're going to find when you start getting into the innards and the workings of a flintlock. But as we go along, I'm happy to entertain questions. I'll talk about the tools that we're using, equipment we're using to maintain and service a weapon of the 18th century, a little bit about the differences between different styles of flintlock weapons, and advice if anybody's looking to buy them, because that's always a fun part too. So chat is open. Please feel free to throw in your questions, and I'm going to get started on this project because, again, I don't know what I'm going to find. The weapon we're going to be working with tonight is this one. This is my boat gun, and when we're not in forced shore leave once a year, this gun goes for a bath in Lake Champlain during a spectacular death sequence that I tend to like doing if it's a nice warm day. Dying in the lake means it gets cleaned, but then it looks like this, pretty rusty and orange. So we're going to pull this apart. We may even take the barrel off, take it right down to its stock, refinish the stock, and clean up to a certain point the metalwork and the furniture on this gun. So to show you one that's in a little better shape, first of all, look at the size of this. This is a 24-inch barrel. This is from about the 1780s, this pattern. They were found on board the USS Constitution, commissioned by the new United States government, to be a sea service weapon, meaning they're intended for use on ship, and that's why it's a 24-inch barrel. Longer barrel gives you a couple of advantages. One, it is more accurate. The longer the barrel is, the longer the ball stays on a true course before it leaves. And also, if you're working in a line of troops and you're in the second rank, you're going to be firing over the shoulder of the person in front of you. And if I did that with this gun, it'd be pretty close to their ear and their face, and they probably wouldn't like that too much. But when you're on board a ship, much like down here in the shop with low ceilings, I want to be able to have a maneuverable gun. I don't want something with a 40-inch, 48-inch barrel that's going to get hung up as I try to move around on board ship and in a boarding situation. So they made these much shorter, much easier to use in close quarters. Full-size musket, I happen to have one here. It's going to look more like this. This is what? Yeah, 42-inch barrel, 58 inches overall, so almost 5 feet in length. This is a French weapon, again, a reproduction. These are all reproductions that I'm working with today of a fusil de chat, a civilian-style fowling gun, bird hunting gun, general-purpose hunting gun. And this is something that if you were in a militia or you were brought into service as a contractor, like what I portray, sort of basically the merchant marine under the command and control of the crown, but not a regular soldier, I'd be carrying something like this. I'd take it off my mantle and I'd go into battle with it. And this is the condition we're going to try to get this gun into. You'll notice it's not shiny. Not a regular troop. I don't want my stuff shiny. I want to be inconspicuous, and I don't want to have to maintain it too much. This has been browned. Get a little bit of rust on it, put some oil on it, and eventually over time you get this nice stable patina on the metal, on the iron furniture, and that actually keeps it from rusting. It's stable chemically. It's going to get a little bit of surface orange on it. You just take an oiled cloth, give it a wipe, and it'll be good as new. It's also not going to be shiny if I'm stalking through the woods. I'm not going to be sending out signal mirror to the people trying to shoot me. So we're going to get this gun to a similar condition as this one. And so we'll start breaking it apart. Also going to work, the other reason to have a long gun as opposed to a short gun, in a general battle situation, you might get off a shot. Maybe. You might get off 2. Hi, Kirsten's dad. Welcome. And hello, Devlin. Hello, Captain. You might get off a shot. You might get off 2 shots. But your weapon is pretty quickly going to become a sticker. It's going to become a long spear with this on the end of it, a bayonet. This is a triangular socket bayonet, fits on this gun, and this also needs a little bit of TLC. So that's another reason you want a longer reach, because most of the time, most of the combat you're going to see as a regular troop in an army in the 18th century is as a pikeman, a spear holder. So the longer it is, the further you can keep the bad guy away from you, the happier you're going to be. So let's switch over. I'm going to go over to my workshop camera here, so bear with me while we just have a little flicker. Oh, come on. It worked today. We did a test. Everything worked. There's the wall. That's not what we want. It's going to not work on the live stream. If it doesn't, there we go. There's our workshop camera. I've pulled out my kit of what a soldier or sailor would be expected to be carrying and own to maintain and service their weapon. Keep mine in a nice little leather bag here. So let's go through these things because we're going to use a lot of them as we start to break down this gun. First of all, I need to be able to fire it. So I have a ball mold. This is what's going to make the actual bullet, the projectile for the weapon. This gun we're going to work on today is a 75 caliber. That was a standard British Army size, meaning that it's 75 100ths of an inch, 0.75 inches. It's a good round. The French use something a little bit lighter. 75 works pretty well. So this is what I'm actually going to cast the lead ball in. I'm going to heat it up on the fire, and I'm going to pour it through this hole here. And if all goes well, I get a lead ball. This is a little bit small. This is probably a French ball. Nah, it wouldn't be French. Probably about a 6.9 caliber. It's a little bit smaller. Just curious now. This is an original. Yeah, about 69 caliber. So you get your lead ball. One of the advantages there's two advantages to firing a lead ball out of a musket. One is it's a lot softer, and it's a lot more gentle on your barrel. The barrel is steel, but in the 18th century, steel's a little bit softer. We're still working out that metallurgy. So if you can have something like lead that isn't going to gouge out that smoothbore barrel, you're going to be happier. The other thing that it allows you to do is make your rounds on sight. You'd have pucks or billets of lead. This is pewter because I don't like casting lead any more than I absolutely have to. I don't fire the pewter balls. They're for demonstration only. But you'd be carrying an amount of lead, and you can make these rounds in the field over a campfire. So big benefit of being able to fire lead rounds rather than the other option, which is this, cast iron. This is a piece of grape shot. These would be tied up in a fabric bag around a wooden sabot to be fired out of a cannon. So you can't make these in the field. You need a foundry. You need to be able to heat the iron up, pour it into molds to make something out of iron. And if I fired something like this too many times out of a musket barrel, it would start to degrade the barrel. So that's why we're working with lead. Put those over there. This is a pretty cool little contraption. This is a spring vise. We're going to use this when we start taking the lock apart. I'll explain how the lock works, and we'll get into more details as we start pulling it apart. There are two springs on a Flintlock musket. There's the frizzen spring, which is going to give you the tension needed to create the spark, and then the main spring, which is actually going to drop that cock down at a high rate of speed. Yes, it's called a cock. Stop your tittering. This is going to allow me to compress that spring so that I can take the lock apart without pieces flying off, and you'll never find them under the workbench. Spring vise. I have another form of lead. This is sheet lead. This is used in the jaws to hold the flint, the piece of sharp rock, in place. You can use leather. I like to use lead. Find that it holds a little bit better. Definitely don't want to lose your flint in the middle of a battle. This is my cartridge form. This is a dual-purpose tool. It is going to roll the paper cartridges. Do I have one to show? I do not have one to show. You're going to have a cylinder of paper filled with gunpowder and with the musket ball, and this is going to allow me to create that form to the proper size so that it fits into my cartridge box. If you were on Monday's stream, you saw the one that I made for Cat. It's a little bit fancier than mine, but this is a wooden block inside a leather carrier that's going to hold all of my rounds ready to fire, keeping them separate. So if I have an accidental detonation, hopefully it's not going to set off everything that's strapped to my body. It could be close to a pound of powder. So this is going to keep it dry, keep it safe from sparks, and ready to go. So The other purpose of this tool is the powder measure. This is going to tell me how much gunpowder I need to pour into those paper cartridges. You can also have, if you're a fancy lad, you can have an adjustable powder measure for different weapons, though this is a pretty expensive little piece of kit, so you can have something like just a basic tube, or you can guess and maybe blow your hands off, maybe not. An oil jar. Very important to keep the inner workings of the gun oiled so that they move freely, don't abrade each other. And the oil that's being used on these guns is sweet oil, which is made from olives. It's just olive oil. It works really well. Modern oils, petroleum oils, tend to get gummy. They plasticize over time. They turn to a gummy, almost epoxy type consistency that's really hard to work with. So olive oil works wonderfully. It was used by all of the armies and navies in the 18th century for care of metal parts and wooden parts. And it works great today. It takes a little more maintenance. It's not going to last as long on the pieces as a petroleum product would, but it's a lot easier when you have to go take it off and redo it. So, little jar of oil. This is something you don't have to use very often, though I pulled it out today because my ramrod's stuck. This is a Ramrod Puller. If you should get the ramrod stuck down the barrel, this will serve like a pair of vice jaws, and you can grab hold of it and pull it out. I imagine it would work really good on a bum tooth as well. I have a turn screw. You might know it as a screwdriver. It was called a turn screw in the 18th century. There were only slotted screws, and they were every one of them made by hand. The threads cut by hand, the heads cut by hand, so you need something to be able to manipulate those screws that are in your gun. A vent prick. This is used to clear out the vent. I'll show you what that piece is in a second. From powder fouling. The thing about black powder, it burns very inefficiently. It leaves behind a lot of charcoal residue, and that'll gum up the works in your gun very quickly, so you need to be able to clean some of that out. This is the set of tools that attaches to my cartridge box for ready access, and also includes the same kind of thing. We had a little 18th century multi-tool here with a vent prick, a turn screw, a non-ferrous, a brass hammer for napping the flint edge on it when it gets dull. If this were iron, there's a possibility, very good possibility, you'd have a spark when you didn't want it, and you'd have a boom when you didn't want it. We try to avoid that. So a napping hammer, and then just a little brass brush for, again, cleaning out that powder fouling that can get in your way. The cleaning tools. These are a couple of different styles of worms for running fabric patches down the barrel, the inside of the barrel, to clean it out. We're not going to pay too much attention to the interior of the barrel right tonight because I don't want to look, but also because I'm going to clean that out with water outside come springtime. This is a cleaning jag. This will hold a patch under tension to go down and sort of plunge out the barrel of fouling. I don't like these. I find you tend to lose a lot of patches down the barrel, then you have to go down with your worm and recover that patch. But that's pretty much it. With those tools, I can maintain this gun in the field. The really nice thing about a flintlock, and one of the reasons that especially frontiersmen and trappers and hunters stuck with flintlocks long into the time period of percussion caps, was because you can't find percussion caps on the ground out in the wilderness. You can find a stone in most areas that you can turn into a flint to keep your gun working if you need to. And with a few basic pieces of equipment, you can keep it running. All that goes into a nice waterproof leather pouch. We'll put that aside, our belly box aside. Put our ball mold away. We will on stream some night when it's a good day. We'll make a campfire and pour some musket balls. It's always fun. Okay, so let's start ripping this thing apart. Here's our flintlock. You know what? I'm going to show you on the one that isn't ugly. Basic anatomy lesson of a flintlock. Let's move my camp axe out of the way. If you're on board for our test stream earlier today, we rehung this camp hatchet, put the head back onto the handle with a wedge so it's nice and tight. That was a good project. Done. So here is our basic flintlock. This is a super high piece of technology when you come into the 18th century. Before this, the predecessor to this was a matchlock weapon. I've used them. Boy, they're a pain in the neck. This was a huge improvement in technology. It's fairly self-contained. Unlike a matchlock, you can load it and have it ready to fire and leave it. A matchlock actually has a lit piece of slow match, which is cotton rope that's been soaked in potassium nitrate or saltpeter, and you have to light that, say you need a source of fire, and then once it's lit, you kind of have only a certain amount of time that you're going to fire that gun or not fire that gun, so you got to make a decision. This can be loaded. You can put what's called a calf's knee over the top of it, a piece of leather that fits over your lock while it's all loaded up to keep it watertight, or actually keep the water out, so that you can just pull that off and you're ready to go. So super high piece of technology for the time period, and it works by using a sharp piece of flint, which is a type of quartz with a very, very fine crystalline structure. It's incredibly hard, which also means it's brittle, so it can be napped or broken into different shapes. And it's so sharp when you break it that it'll actually scrape off pieces of steel. And that's what this piece is here. This is the frizzen, and on the front of it has been hardened with a chemical called caseinite, generally, so that it's very hard and it scrapes off into little pieces very easily from the sharp flint. And a spark is nothing more than a hot, burning piece of metal. So the way we work this gun, put a little bit of gunpowder. Oh yeah, when it's nice out, we'll go out and do some firing too. Not tonight. Put a little bit of gunpowder here into the pan. And opposite the pan, a bit hard to see here, you can see it, is a vent. That is a hole in the side of the barrel. When the flint comes down, hits the frizzen, sparks, hopefully, go down into the pan, ignite that bit of powder, that fire travels through that vent hole and ignites your main charge, which is here. So you have your gunpowder and your projectile, whether that's a solid ball or a bunch of buckshot, pine cones, whatever you want, is in front of that gunpowder. It's going to ignite out the end of the barrel into the Frenchman. There are two positions on the cock. This is the cock. We have jaws, top jaw, bottom jaw, get in frame, top jaw, bottom jaw, and a screw to hold that under tension. You can see the lead in there holding the flint on. Let's take our flint right off. Let me grab a modern. I've got that on there pretty tight. I'm going to grab a modern turn screw with a little more torque. Benefits of being in a modern shop. So we're going to loosen our top jaw screw. Our flint will pop out. One of the things you want to keep a very close eye on in the field when you're using these guns is that this is tight, because if your flint goes flying off, well, you got to stop and you got to change it. People are going to shoot you. So there's our flint. It's been napped or broken into a particular shape so that it fits in the jaws and hopefully sends the sparks down into the pan. You can see the leather wrapped around it. So this one is still good, so we're just going to leave that to put back in. This is pretty rusty. Let's switch over to the gun we actually want to work on, which doesn't look as pretty. There we go. There's one piece on this weapon that is not 18th century correct. If you can put it in the chat, 20 bonus points. Points don't mean anything. If you can tell me what piece on this gun is not accurate to the time period. Let's take off our flint. If we can break through the rust. There we go. We're going to pull this. That's a nice trays so we don't lose pieces. There's our flint. See a size difference? The flint is going to be sized to the gun. Military weapons tend to be a lot bigger, chunkier, because soldiers break things. They're not too bright. So bigger, chunkier gun. This is I believe this is the same lock. Yeah, this is a tower lock. So this would have actually been made and purchased out of England, out of London. Same lock that would go into a Brown Bess, the standard weapon for the British military up until up into the Napoleonic Wars. So there's our flint. Put that over there. Take our top jaw screw out, because all these are going to get scrubbed and re-oiled. So there's our top jaw. Has little knobbins on it to hold the lead. Top jaw screw. And then we're left with our cock. And we're going to take our frizzen off now. So I need to remove the inaccurate piece in a minute. First, we're going to put a clamp on that so it doesn't go flying across the room. As fun as that is. We're going to put our spring vise. This is our frizzen spring. So there's two positions to the flintlock. There's half cock, which is a safety. Pull the trigger, nothing happens. This is your loaded, primed, ready to fire position. full cock back here. Now if I pull the trigger, it will actually fall down. Brownie point spark guard, yeah. Flash guard. This brass piece right here is a modern convenience because when the pan ignites, it sends out a jet of flame in this direction, and sometimes there's a dude standing next to me, and they don't like getting flashes of sparks in their face. In the 18th century, I don't really care. Okay. And I really don't need that on this one, except to pass inspection. I wouldn't pass somebody's safety inspection if they didn't have one. But I'm not firing in a line of troops with this gun, again, because it's too short. It'll blow out somebody's eardrums. This is really for running through the woods, jumping in and out of boats, that kind of thing. Tell you a little bit about this gun as I take this apart. This is really made for a mainspring, but we can press that spring just enough like that. Now our frizzen, well, if it wasn't caught by the vise, would be moving freely. Pull off our flash guard. This is a reproduction Flintlock made in India, which is interesting because the East India Company made guns for a bunch of armies, mostly for the British, because, well, they were kind of the colonizers back in the day, and now they're making reproductions on some of the same machinery that they used to make weapons in the 18th and 19th century, so kind of cool. If you're buying a reproduction gun, there are essentially 3 levels, this being the bottom. It's perfectly fine. It's great. This is a $500 replica. I don't know if I'd fire it live too many times, meaning with a ball, because that's to put a lot more stress on the barrel. I'd do it. It'd be fine. But the fit, the finish, the construction, it's not great, but it's more accurate. Military weapons being made in the 18th century were not made to incredibly exacting, beautiful standards. They were made actually so you could have some replaceable parts and some interchangeable parts. It wasn't really Henry Ford's thing. They made them a little sloppy. You can see there's gaps in the fit and the finish around the lock and the stock. That's accurate, and they're making them the same way that they did. So inexpensive gun, great for a beginning reenactor or for somebody who's going to let their gun look like this. The next step up, if you want to buy something, would be like a Pedersoli, Italian-made reproduction, high-quality gun, going to be about 2 to 3 times the price of something made in India, but you can live fire it until the cows come home. Nothing's going to go wrong. Great guns. They make a whole wide variety of 18th and 19th and I think some early 20th century guns. So there's our frizzen pulled off. Set that aside. Hey, that's you. I'm trying. I have to read the chat at the same time. No, yes, your buddies next to you don't like getting sparks in their face usually. Now we can. Now we removed that. I'm not going to take the frizzen spring off. We're not going to fully disassemble this lock, just enough so that we can give it a good cleaning. So let's release the tension on that spring. Let it rest on the pan. Now that we have our frizzen off. Where was I? So, good introductory gun. You want something you're going to take to the range and live fire a whole bunch. Get a Pedersoli. They make a beautiful second model Bess. I don't think they make a first model Bess. I wish they did. Next step up is going to be something like my Fusee that I showed you. This, you can see, although it needs a little bit of refinishing and work, the fit, the finish is beautiful. This is my live firing gun. I can hit a pipe plate at 100 yards every time. This is made by a gun maker, a sole gun maker, who's going to have all these parts fitted just for this gun. It's a Davis lock. This is from about the 1980s. This is going to be about 4 times the price of it. No. 500. About 6 times the price of this. But if you want something beautiful, you're going to hang it on your wall. It's going to be an art piece. You're going to take it out and live shoot it competitively. You want something like this. If you're new to reenacting and you're running around a field dropping your gun or dropping it in the lake, don't take that one. That's why you have these. I'm also going to pull off, I have a, this would not be military standard because I don't want people to be comfortable, but on a lot of Ranger guns and boat guns, you put a strap so you can sling it over your back or over your shoulder. I'm going to take this off because it's getting in my way. I'm working on the gun, so we're going to just going to untie the leather for it. Some military weapons had slings, especially later on, but generally you want your soldiers carrying their guns. You need a pair of stronger fingers. That off. Pull that lacing out of the front sling. Get this little bit of stuff off of here. The guy who lets his gun look like, yeah, I am. The nice thing about these is they're not too hard to bring back. I've brought back some guns in far worse condition than this. Obviously, you don't want to let it get to the point where the rust is pitting the metal, or actually putting holes into it. But once you get that layer of browning, that stable oxidation layer, it's pretty hard to let it get to that point. All right, there we go. That's a little stiff from being wet, but we'll get that off there. Sling removed. I'm not sure I'm going to pull the barrel today. We'll see if we get that far. We don't need to pull it necessarily to put another coat of wax on the stock. The ramrod on this gun is stuck. Now, I'm not sure if that's because it's rusted in place or there's actually something impeding it. Sometimes your side nails and lock plate screws will interfere with actually removing the ramrod. This is a steel ramrod, more military style. You'll see it has a wooden ramrod. Let's pull this lock off. To do that, we're going to flip it over. This is our side plate. In this case, it's brass. Again, not shiny, but you could turn that into a really shiny piece if you wanted to. And these are your side nails, or side nails. They're actually bolts, but they call them nails. I don't know if they had the word bolt yet. Ooh, there's two of them. They go clean through the gun and anchor into the lock on the other side. You can see it's just a basic machine screw. But again, somebody would have been cutting these threads by hand. It's quite the skill to make good screws. Put that in the tray so we don't lose it. All right. The reason I'm hesitant to remove the barrel, if I don't... too stuck for the Ramrod Puller. This ramrod, I could try it. I don't think it's going to fit over the end. The Ramrod Puller is really intended for removing like a stuck... If you get a musket ball stuck and you can't shoot it out, you have a screw ball remover that screws onto the end of a ramrod. You go down, you screw it into the lead, and you pull it out. But you're only left with usually about an inch at most of ramrod sticking out of your gun. So it's not much to grab hold of, and that's where this comes into play to help pull that out. I don't think it will fit over the bulbous end of this ramrod to pull it out of the channel. All right, pull that out. Oh, look at that rust. Beverage. I probably haven't talked this long in a while. I'm out of shape. And now, with a little effort, our lock comes out. Look at that. Oh, see, it's fine on the inside. Perfect. Basic lock anatomy. This is that mainspring I mentioned. This is of all the pieces in the lock, this is probably the most valuable and the hardest to make in the 18th century because it's a piece of spring steel. So it has to be annealed. You can see a little bit of the oil even plasticizing, even though it's olive oil. It turns into a gunky stuff. This is a hard piece to make metallurgically. You have to turn it into something that's springy, so it's got to be hard, but it's got to be flexible at the same time. There's a few other little pieces in here. We have one more spring. I said there were two, I lied. There's a Sear Spring. This is what actually gives your trigger some tension. We have there's a plate over the top, so it's a little harder to see. But underneath here is the tumbler, and you can see the two notches for the two positions of the cock. half cock where it will not fire and full cock where it's ready to fire. And then this piece is our sear. That's what's actually going to interact with. You can see this long piece goes into the stock and engages with the trigger, allowing you to release the mainspring. Cock comes down, gun goes boom. So that's basically it. You got a mainspring, you got a tumbler, you got a sear. This has a little plate over the top to keep it all together. Sear spring, and we're not going to break this down because it's a lot of work, and it really doesn't need it. This just needs a little bit of scrubbing. You can see there's still oil in there. I like to see that when I pull a lock out. I don't want it to be dry. I want to see some oil moving around in there to keep abrasion from happening between these metal pieces. And then this is the lock plate. Again, the cock, the jaws, the pan, frizzen spring. Yay, frizzen spring. And this one, when we clean it up, we'll see all the nice markings on it. Tower of London, indicating the maker, and Georgius Rex, a nice GR and crown there, indicating that this belongs to His Majesty. Don't let it look like this. All right, put that over there. Throw that away. And then we see the interior where this has been chiseled out and cut out to accept the different pieces. And it looks pretty good in there. We got a little gunkiness we'll clean out. Give that a little clean. Trigger. I don't think I'm going to remove the barrel. I started saying why not. This being an English gun uses a pin system to hold the barrel, the ramrod pipes, and these swivels in place. So it is on the bottom of the barrel are protrusions welded on that come down with a hole through them. And all you do is put this drift pin through. It's just a straight pin. There's no threads, there's no bolts. Side, other side. To take this apart, to take the barrel off, you use a drift punch, punch that out, and you can release everything. Every time you do that, you shorten the life of the stock because you're going to blow out some wood. It's going to make it looser. The French had a much better system. Wine, cheese, and barrel bands. Those are the things they know how to do well. They used bands, metal bands, around the gun to hold the barrel in place on something like a Charleville. And that made it a lot easier. You pull those bands off with screws, off they go, barrel comes out. Much easier to deep clean the gun. This is not the highest quality stock, again, being an India-made gun. It should be something like English walnut or American walnut. This is not. I don't know what it is. It's a bit softer. So I'm gonna pass on that. We'll give everything a good scrub, and we're gonna refinish the stock a little bit. Probably I won't sand it. We're just gonna put a new layer. The other furniture that's on the gun, we have a butt plate. The butt of your gun spends a lot of time on the ground when you're doing drill and just standing around. So there's a nice metal piece on there. It's also good if you want to, persuade somebody to step back. Trigger guard, keeping my trigger from catching on everything, and some sling swivels. These are the barrel bands, or barrel pipes in this case. Sorry, barrel bands go around, barrel pipes ramrod pipes holding the ramrod in place, and then just a bit of brass furniture on the end to keep the stock from splitting out. Also, to allow me room to socket my bayonet. This is not a front sight, even though it looks like it. Look how crooked that's soldered on there, because it doesn't matter, it's not a sight. These guns did not have front sights. My Fusee does, because it's intended to really hit something at a distance. This is a Bayonet Lug, and it is here for the sole purpose of lugging my bayonet, because it's heavy. No, that was really bad. The bayonet is a socket style, goes onto the gun, locks in place on that lug. That's the only reason that is there. And I have a nice sharp and pokey. Oh, come on off of there. Don't you get stuck in. There you go. Bayonet scabbard, important, so I don't stab my leg. Okay. Let's scrub this lock up and get it oiled. So we'll take the gun, put it over here. Those are our lock pieces. Yay, lock pieces. Let's get some water. Tub of some nice warm water. The first step in field cleaning a gun like this would be to pour boiling water down the barrel and get out all of that powder fouling. Gunpowder being charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate. It's really gunky. It likes to make everything dirty. So you flush it out with water first. Modern gun shooters look at us like we're absolutely nuts. We pour water down our guns, but it works. All right, I'm going to start with some of these smaller pieces. Proper 18th century style for polishing would be using this. A brick. Yeah, you take the brick, and no, not really. You turn the brick into dust. This stuff. You make brick dust. And with a little bit of water and a cloth, it makes a really good polishing agent. And that's what gives the regular troops their nice shiny finish. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to use ye olde Britlow pad. I don't want to scratch this too much. I just want to get in there. Again, I'm trying to leave the browning. This gun is still going through its browning process. It takes years to get that good stable finish. So in this case, I'm just getting off that surface rust. The orangey stuff and the gunky stuff and the zebra mussels and what other lake garbage might be on here. Clean out the pan really well because that's going to be full of powder fouling. A good scrubbing. Scrubby, scrub, scrub. Had you for a minute with the brick, yeah. This is not one. I have a few 18th century bricks that I found on the beach that we're going to crush up into proper brick dust sometime whenever we're allowed to crush up bricks with our friends again. This is it. I'm getting off all the old oil. We're not going crazy. We're not going down to bare metal here. We want this to be serviceably clean, but not shiny. It's the quote from Sharp's Rifles. Men are dirty. Rifles are clean. Well, you at least have to be able to see that GR crown in there nicely. Okay. You can feel it. You can feel when an area is rough. It needs a little fixing. That's kind of what we're looking for. We want it to be still brown, but without any surface gunk. You didn't know you were in for such excitement of watching these scrubbed metal parts tonight. But this is good, because I probably would have put off this project for another 6 months. I didn't have a reason to do it. I think I covered everything about the different types of replica guns. That was all I wanted to say. There was a fair bit of controversy in the hobby when those India guns started to come out. Oh, they'll explode in your face. I've never had a problem with mine. In fact, I've had less problems with my India gun than I have with Pedersoli's. They had a batch of Pedersoli second model Besses when I first started reenacting that had faulty mainsprings. And I went through 3 mainsprings at about $65 or so a pop. They would just shatter and crack in the field. Thanks, Billy. Why don't you come over and do it? As soon as we can. All right, that is sufficient for me. I'm going to give these a good rinse because there's like soap embedded in these Brillo pads. But they're really good for this. Man, I'm not getting into all the little creases and crevices because the next thing this gun's going to do is get dumped in the lake again. There we go. Give my flash guard a little bit of a scrub. Get the green, get the powder off it. Yeah, 2 more streams I think we need to do as soon as we get a little bit better weather. Start a campfire, we'll make some musket balls, and then we'll go through the firing process. Probably on this gun, and then I'll just have to clean it again. Fire some blank rounds in the backyard, wake the neighbors up. Top jaw. Perfect. There you can see better the little nubbins on the top jaw to grab into that lead. Leather does work. I prefer lead. It tastes better. Okay, there we go. Top jaw screw. All those threads cleaned out. You want the threads pretty clean, otherwise they can get stuck. So if you're out in the field and you're firing this gun, you've got your basic toolkit, the things to keep an eye on to keep it going boom. Make sure there's a clean pan, so get the powder fouling every couple of shots out of that with a brush. We've got some crud in there. Get that out. Soap. We'll take these under the faucet, give them good cleaning after. So if your gun doesn't work, check that you have a sharp flint. If you need to put a new edge on it, put a new edge on it. Give it a little nap. Not because it's tired, because it's dull. There we go. What is that? Frizzen screw. Frizzen screw. Pick your vent. Clean out the powder fouling that might be keeping fire from getting to the gunpowder on the inside of your barrel. Matchlocks. Yeah, they're fun to play around with. I don't own one. They're really fiddly. When Flintlocks came on the scene, it was a massive improvement in technology. Like, you mean I can load my gun and then run through the woods with it loaded? You're nuts. Matchlocks were pretty much out of favor by first decade or so of the 18th century, with good reason. Frizzen assembly, or frizzen itself. Clean that off, clean off the face, and the back. The pistols look exactly the same, they're just wee. And usually with a smaller lock. Cat, if you're looking at this lock, compare this to the size of your Queen Anne. It's pretty much the only thing that changes is the lock size and the barrel size, obviously. Okay, good. Off hands. Move my brick. Let me put up... I brought drawings. Look at that. There's the different parts if you want to study. Different parts of the external view of the lock. Yeah, you can call it a hammer. I prefer to call it a cock. Let's set that over next to the batteries. That'll be good. Okay. And I can send these to anybody who's interested. This is a nice little breakdown. It's a pistol, but it doesn't matter. Nice little breakdown of all of those parts. Ours has an extra plate over the top of it, but basically the same parts of a lock that is entirely broken apart. And here you can see how the barrel would come out. The barrel is actually two pieces. There's a breech plug back, come on, back there. You can see, I think I can do, yeah. There's your breech plug back there. That's threaded. That screws into the barrel. You're probably never going to take that out of your musket. Unless something really weird happens. You can see the screw here that attaches into the stock and those barrel lugs that I mentioned. This pistol is using these sort of pin style or bracket style, but you can do the same thing with just basic straight pins. And you can see the ramrod pipes there that hold the ramrod in place. Cool. I like this software. All right. Oh, hey. Oh. Okay, there we go. Make that go away. Make that go away. If anybody wants those illustrations, I'm happy to send them. Okay. Let's give our... Okay, there we are. Let's give our barrel just a little scrubby dub. The worst of that rust off of it. You can see that screw on the top that holds the barrel in, and that joint is somewhere in there for the breech plug. Not going to worry too much actually about scratching up the finish on the stock because we're going to put a new coat of wax on it tonight. I'm just going to get the surface rust off. This barrel, I have a suspicion, has more chromium in it than an 18th century steel barrel would. It's probably verging on stainless almost, because even after years it has not taken a browning very good, despite my efforts. That's just what happens when you try to find materials in the 20th century. Sometimes they're not exactly what you want. Just give that a scrubbing. And I'm not going to worry too much about the interior of the barrel. It's not bad. We'll deal with that when we fire it. All right. Give that. Rinse down. Get the cleaner off of it. That's about it. You can see it's still got a bit of browning on it. That's okay. That's stable. It's not actually oxidizing the metal. Not causing any problem to it. There we go. Okay. Back on the bench. Okay. Oh, while we've got the scrubby stuff out, scrub this rust off the bayonet. Also not going to get it back to bright, because I'm boat trash, and I don't care. That's going to take most of it right off, though. Triangular shaped bayonet, mostly for strength. There's that whole thing of you can't stitch a triangular wound. You can stitch a triangular wound. If you get stabbed by a bayonet, you really don't care if it was triangular or straight. You're still dead. The predecessor to the socket-style bayonet is called a plug bayonet. It's basically a big dagger with a wooden handle that fits in the end of your gun. Benefit of this type is you could actually fire while you have your bayonet on the gun. Looks like bluing by the light. No, nothing. Yeah, nothing here is blued. It's the fluorescent lights. You don't see bluing coming around until, I think, Wild West days, end of the 19th century. Ooh, this is going to shine up nicely. As long as I don't put it through my hand. Beautifully cleaned bayonet. Ready for its most common task of cleaning up beer cans in camp the next morning. There we go. We'll put some oil on that. So, the next thing we're going to do, got all of our old oil and gunk off of here. We're going to dry this a bit. Dry it off a bit. And then we will give the wooden parts and a little bit on the metal parts because it helps keep the rust away. We're going to put an 18th century finish on this. Again, you could put modern, you could use modern oils, gun oils, you could use modern wood finishes, but modern stuff is very often, what's the word? Irreversible. Once it's there, it's there. If you were to like shellac this, it would last until it didn't, and then you'd have a heck of a time scraping it off. In fact, this gun came from India with some type of a clear coat on it, and I spent ages with a scraper, side of like a pair of scissors, scraping it down, removing some wood too because it was a little bit oversized, and just trying to get it down to wood. So my advice, 18th century gear, treat it in the 18th century way. They did it for a reason. It worked for hundreds of years, and it's what the piece is made to have. Yeah, it makes more maintenance. You got to keep up on it, but in the long run, it's going to serve you better. It's going to look better. Something just went ka-ching. No hand stabby. Nope. Marks on the screen are still up. Oh, they are kind of still up there, aren't they? How do I fix that? Do-do-dunk. Do-do-dunk. I should be gone now. Oh, so that's my finger mark from doing that. I have to do that. There we go. There we go. Okay. Get most of the water off of this. Good. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of oil. Let's go back to put our lock away. Go back to this other camera if we can. Likes to do it sometimes and not other times. Who turned off those? Oh, we totally broke it now. Anybody? There we go. Yay! Okay, old water. It switches fine. Not live streaming. It's a little bit hesitant to do it when we are live, but it works. Okay, so we're going to put just a little bit of oil into the recess for the lock. Trigger around a little bit. Just put that there. Looks like we got a little crud in our vent. Clean that out. There, just make sure everything's oiled on the inside there. Now we're going to put on some 18th century wood finish. That is this stuff right here. I love this stuff. I'm going to glove up because it's a little nasty. Not that it's going to hurt you, but it has a strong turpentine smell because that's one of its parts. Used as a carrier and an evaporate. Find some gloves. And your hands will smell like turpentine for about a month and a half after you use it. So I'm going to glove up. This, you can make this at home. It's really useful stuff for any wood finish. It is a third beeswax, stock standard beeswax, melted up in a double boiler. 1/3 linseed oil. I have not found a ton of difference between using boiled and raw linseed oil. I'd use what you have. And then 1/3 turpentine. And you can adjust those ratios depending on what you want. This one is a little bit heavier on the wax because I wanted something that would stay solid and pasty in all conditions, all weather conditions. If you want it a little looser, if you're going to use it to treat leather, you can up your oil ratio a little bit. And then again, the turpentine is there to keep it a little bit more liquidy and help it penetrate. All right. Pop that off. What you get is this beautiful paste wax. And just take a bit of a rag. Can't tear a piece of fabric. There we go. Take a bit of a rag, and we're just going to put this onto the wood. I'm going to let it sit for a while, and then I'll come back and burnish it just with a rag. It looks obscene. Give it a really good hard rub up and down the stock to heat up the wax, and it'll help penetrate the wood and get off any excess so you don't have wax all over your hands. For now, we're just going to put on a fairly heavy coating, and I'm going to hit my fusee as well since I have a rag covered with this stuff. Being that this stuff does have turpentine in it, it's perfectly safe like this, but if you have a rag that has it, it's like having any kind of oily rag. Keep it outside or keep it in a paint can. They can spontaneously combust. So I'm just going to toss this out in the snow when I'm done with it. So you can see by giving it a vigorous rub down, it starts to melt that beeswax and really penetrate the wood. And again, it's a better finish, but you just have to maintain it more. Put a little jar of this in your field kit. Every time you clean your gun, you're going to have boiling water that pours down over the butt and takes off some of this finish, and just put another coat on. Do some maintenance work. Don't expect everything to be perfect forever because you did it once. All right. Look at how nice that looks already. Look at that. Flip her over. Give her the old waxing. And if you get some into the openings in between the furniture, that's good. This stuff kind of helps fill cracks. I used it on that camp axe earlier today that we put the wedge in to kind of help seal any little cracks and openings. And if you get a little bit there in the screw hole, that's fine. The screw is just going to pick it up, bring it in. It's going to make it nice and waterproof and rust-proof. So again, if I wanted to totally pull this gun apart, I'd pull off the side plate. I would take off the trigger guard and all that. But every time you do that, you're going to reduce the lifespan of the stock. So it doesn't need it, so I'm not going to do it. Oh, look how much better that is already. Yes, put a little bit on that iron furniture there. So I recommend, if you have even just wooden hand tools around the house, make up a batch of this. Make it up outside on like a propane burner. It'll make your house smell like turpentine for ages. I thought it would be a really good idea when I made up a batch once to stick it in the fridge when it was done to cool it down. Glad it was a rental. That fridge always smelled like turpentine after that. I moved out. Okay. That, I think, is sufficient. We'll come back and burnish that in a little bit. Over on the table, let's put a little bit on the fusee since we're doing it. The whole segment is easy for jokes. Yeah, names of gun parts. Yeah, they're ripe for the joking. There is one modern product that I do use. Traditionally, be mostly the boiling water method. I've never come across any other recipes for powder solvents that are 18th century appropriate. I've been used mostly the water. I do use number 13. This is a very mild, in fact, it's food safe. You could drink it, don't drink it. But it's very inert, but it does dissolve powder. So this is what I use for the interior of the bore on a patch until it comes out clean. You can get this at any gun shop or Amazon, etc., etc. So I got blasted in the face by a cannon one day. And turns out charcoal tattoos really, really well. So I had all kinds of black spots embedded in the skin of my face. Didn't want to leave those. Didn't feel like taking on the Maori looks. So went to the doctor, and he goes, I don't know. What would you normally use to get rid of powder, gunpowder? I said, well, this stuff. So we looked it up. In fact, it is, I don't know if it says right on the can. Yeah, FDA food grade rated. Non-toxic. Contains polydithidabidabidabidabid in water. So I used a needle and this stuff to dissolve the gunpowder out of my face. Good times. Don't look at the vent when you fire a cannon. Turns out the fire comes out both ends. Just like bad Taco Bell. Okay. Let's give this guy a nice little rub down. Wooden ramrod on this gun. More of a, either earlier, you'll find it on military guns. The first model Bess had a wooden ramrod, and civilian guns have wooden rods, but they tend to break in military use. And if you don't have a ramrod, you don't have a firearm. So I went with the steel. Most of the military guns after about 1750. I love this gun. Wax. Team Car Ramrod. Oh, goodbye me. I started out in a crew where if you didn't get peppered in the face, you weren't a full member. Yeah, run fast. It happens. It should not happen with land artillery because they're up high enough. For us in the boats and the dories and stuff, that vent is right at your face level. And, yeah, it happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to people I know. It can be really, really bad if your eyes are open. When we fire those guns now on board ship, we wear safety glasses. That's something that happened after a few incidents. I luckily closed my eyes. I did not get a lot of the burning powder into my eyes. We do go with the safety glasses because we're on boats, and if anybody is that close to see that we're wearing these entirely transparent safety glasses, well, then they're in front of my gun and I'm going to shoot them. So, problem solved. This is the 21st century. I need to be able to see a computer screen to make a living. I can't take the risk of having something happen to my eyes for a game, essentially. So, there we go. Some nice wax on the fusil de champ. Over there. Close this puppy up. Blink. Yeah, I'm going to let those sit overnight and bake in that wax, and then I'll give them a burnishing tomorrow, and we can reassemble the lock tonight. Let's do that. Let's put this back together. And that is going to go outside because it's covered with a flammable solid. We did a demo, showed how bad I turned. Yeah. Yes. Even though we are firing blanks at each other, sometimes at relatively close range, it'll still hurt you. And a cannon will still kill you, even if there's nothing metal coming out of the end of it. The concussion will certainly do you some damage. And the fire, one of the things I like to do when I teach people to shoot artillery is have one of their very first firings be at night, so that you can see the distance that both the muzzle flash has and the vent, more importantly, because that's the one by your face. It's hard to see during the day. So, yeah, we're blowing stuff up for fun. It's dangerous. You got to be careful with it. If you want to keep doing this stuff, if we want to be allowed to keep doing this stuff, you got to do it as safely as possible. Let's put a lock together. And a little bit more of that green stuff off of there. My perfectly period correct plastic toothbrush. Get that soap out. There we go. All right, so that's relatively dry. And there's still a bit of rust. That's okay. We're going to oil it right in. Get all that old oil out of there. What time is it? It is... Oh, cool. We spent about an hour. I like that. Get this puppy back together. Make sure your trigger is forward when you put your lock back on so that it functions properly. Does this have matching lock screws or not? Some guns have differing lock screws. These, though, are identical. Cool. Doesn't matter. That's got enough wax on it. If I had not waxed the stock, I would throw some oil on the threads of the screws before putting them in, but they're sucking that wax and linseed oil down in there with them. So these don't need to be super tight, just tight like that. Check them before you go to use the gun. It's good. Just everything's tight, everything's secure. Don't do that to your stock. Okay. Lock is back in place. Oh, look at that. See, that's what I was talking about. Pulled that wax right through the holes. So all those threads are nicely bedded in oil and wax. Stick to your spoons. Probably not a bad idea. We'll defend the galley valiantly. Okay, we need to recompress our frizzen spring. Crank. Which gives me a chance to get more crud out from in there. Crud out from in there. What else did I want to talk about tonight? I don't remember. Okay, replace our frizzen. No, till we compress that spring more. There we go. Frizzen screw. I'm going to put a dollop of oil in there. Whew, a little more. My stronger fingers out. All right, there we go. Come on. There you go. Go in there. Let's compress that a bit more. Nice and loose now. Oh, much better. Compress tighter for ease of screwing. Okay, so that should, we can adjust the tension on that screw once we take our vise off. There. So you can see here really well what that spring is doing. It's holding the frizzen closed over the pan so that your priming powder stays in place, and so that there's tension when the flint hits the frizzen. It has a little resistance, and if that's too much, if like right now that feels like too much, it's not the spring, it's the screw, because it was there was no tension on it. I was able to tighten that screw too much. So we just back that off. We'll try it when we're done, and we might need to loosen that even a little bit more. But we'll see. This is a pretty heavy lock, so that should be fairly stout. Quick tip, as you are storing your lock, your flintlock, it should be in this position. Hammer down, frizzen open. Does two things. Tells me the gun is unloaded. But it also reduces the stress on the springs as much as possible. If I keep it at half cock or full cock, why you would do that, I don't know. You're putting more tension on that main spring. and you don't want that to break. So right now we're at half cock, again, safety lock position, just for reassembling the cock. How many times can I say cock on a live stream? Okay. And we're going to give this outside a whole coating of oil after the fact as well. There's a particular restaurant over in Vermont that we frequent, and I renovated, did basically full breakdown and refurbish on a second model Bess for the owner of that restaurant, and he hangs it on the wall in the restaurant. And we have a running battle. Every time he thinks it looks better, frizzen closed, hammer it at cock, and every time I go in, I ease the tension on the springs. I don't want it to break. I haven't told him I do that. It's just a thing we do. Okay. Loosely put that back on there. Put a mini dollop of oil on there. You know what I forgot? Anybody see what I forgot? Forgot to put my flash guard back on. Bugger. That means we're going to put the frizzen spring back under tension. Because the flash guard, because I'm not in modern safety thinking mode, the flash guard is retained by the frizzen screw. It goes underneath it. Well, just do it again for practice. Yeah, I wasn't going to call out Bob, but we did. Okay. Yeah, prison guard. I think I saw firing flintlocks in the rain. You can. You don't like to. Battles would be called on account of rain. Yeah, I'll come back tomorrow and we can actually kill each other. That cow's knee or calf's knee I mentioned, a leather piece that goes over the entire lock, will help you a lot until you start shooting. Black powder is just fanatically hydroscopic, sucks up moisture, and that's why I was tightening too much on that frizzen screw, because it's set to have a little extra piece in it. It sucks up moisture out of the atmosphere. Even just a humid day, it's going to get gummy. It's not going to do what you want it to do. So, for the most part, pick a better day to kill people. There. Ugly piece of brass back in place. Lefty-loosey. There we go. Nice! Okay, what's next? We'll put the flint back in. This one is a little chewed. I may replace this before we do any firing demonstrations, but that's probably going to be a long ways off. These are English flints. You can see they're nice and black with some white chalk bits. You find flint nodules in chalk deposits, which is why you have so much of it in England. But over here, you can use different types of quartz cherts and things. There are some good deposits down by Mount Independence. One of the reasons there was a fort built there. It's also a big, tall bluff looking over Ticonderoga, but some of the best local flint comes from that area. The beaches of Maine have some wonderful cherts that can be turned into nice gun flints. So archaeologically, if you're finding a flint and it is this grayish to black color, it's English. And if it is yellow to orangish, it's a French flint. That was their flint deposits tend to be a bright yellow color. They're better. Shh. Merch! Get your merch! We're not selling flintlocks yet, but who knows? All right, we're going to put that in the jaw. So I was running down the list of things that if you're in the field and your gun no-go bang, you want to check. Clean out the pan, wipe your frizzen, Clean any powder fouling off the front of that, and tighten down your top jaw screw, because if your flint is loose, it's going to get all wiggly. That's not going to make a spark. Which is why you need things like turn screws and picks in the field. Yeah, you also want to check the geometry of the flint. Make sure that it is parallel to the frizzen, so that you're getting a lot of contact. You're not just getting a little edge. This would probably spark, although it's covered with oil right now. And also, yeah, before you go out in the field, give your gun a wipe down with a rag and just get off any extra oil, especially oil that's on the flint or the frizzen, because it's a lubricant and you don't want it. You want friction, right? You want to scrape off pieces of that hardened steel. There. So let's try that. We're going to grab just for farts and snuggles, we're going to grab our ramrod, throw it down there. It tings off the back, metal on metal. I know that's not loaded. I'd hate to put a hole in the side of my house. Today, anyway. All right, we're going to give this a little wipey down. Get off the extra oil that's on it. And see if our lock is all put back together properly. That would go bang. Yep, we did it right. Frizzen tension is good. Trigger is in the right place. That's a common mistake when you're putting the lock back on. You can have the trigger in the either the front side or the back side of the sear, and then it will no work. But that works. See it again? Boom. Close the frizzen. So we would put priming powder in the pan behind the flash guard. Close the frizzen. Pull the hammer back to full cock. Pull the trigger. We get nice sparks that are hopefully going to go down into our pan. Ignite the priming powder. Ignite the main charge. Ball goes at the Frenchman. Sorry, I always pick on the French. With good reason. Okay. And of course our bayonet, I'm just going to give that a light coating of oil. It looks much better now. No, it's not. There's no sharp edges. It's just the sharp pointy bits. So I can just do that. Socket. Actually, I'm really going to give someday a good cleaning to the inside of that socket because it was sticking a little bit. Get in there with a dowel and some steel wool and remove a little bit of material so it fits better. But there. We're going to let all that stuff bake in its oil overnight, and then tomorrow just take a rag and give it a quick little burnishing to really set that oil. Put those in the water. And I think that's pretty much what I had in mind for tonight. As questions or anything else you want me to yammer on about, I can. T-shirt, watch cap, Flintlock. Yeah, they're allowed. Give your kids guns. It's good for them. Yes. But that went well. Look, I didn't break anything. I've got two relatively clean and reassembled guns. I've got tools all over the place. But we did good. That's kind of a field cleaning. You wouldn't go... I actually would not take the cock and frizzen and stuff apart in the field. I would just take the lock out, give it a scrub, throw some oil, put it back in, clean out the inside of the barrel, and it'd be good to fight again tomorrow. Key points: olive oil for your lubrication. Make yourself up a batch of the wood finish wax. Third turpentine, third beeswax, third linseed oil. If you find differences between boiled and raw linseed oil, let me know. I've tried both. I haven't noticed a huge difference. Also works great on leather. Put a coating of this on something leather. Throw it in the lowest setting on your oven or stick it out in the sun. I mean, like real low on the oven, like set it at whatever, 150, and then leave the door open for a little bit. Throw it in there. You want like 100 and something degrees. And it'll suck right into that leather, and it's good for a long time. If there are no further questions, I think we'll call it there, and I'm going to clean up the shop. Thanks for coming and joining tonight. This was fun. We need a name for this segment. I threw out Shopping with Dakkar Could be taken the wrong way and I'll end up on a weird feed somewhere, but I'm going to do more of these projects. Anytime I'm working on something 18th century-ish here in the shop, bring you in and talk about it while I do it, because this was fun. All right, cool. Good night. Oh, I got to hit, where's the end button? There it is. Okay.